We are on a quest to make our homes all they can be.
All that God designed them to be, and He'll equip us to do it.
So stick around. This is a home that heals. It's just so great to have you with us. I'm Dee, and this is Brie. She's my daughter. You'd never guess that I could have a daughter that old, would you?
Old?
Yeah.
I thought I'm young, but welcome to A Home That Heals. We are so glad that you are joining us today.
I'm kind of going to put my reporter hat on again today. If you don't know, I was a reporter for 40 years. It made me very nosy, and I love to ask questions. And we're going to find out a little bit about Brie's story that some might consider extreme. And we have found that a lot of times when you're trying to create a home that heals, really heals, that sometimes you go to extreme measures to do that.
But you know what? That mama bear just tends to come out in you, right? And you just want to figure out how to fix stuff, how to make it better, and how to make your home everything that you know God desires for it to be. And for us, that was kind of an extreme decision, one that honestly, if you don't know this about me, but yet you know me, you would be blown away. You would think there is no way in the world Brie would ever do that.
But you did, and it was a big decision, about a year and a half ago? Mm-hmm. And your family, you decided to homeschool.
We did.
It's a big step.
It is. It was a huge step, and it was one that I literally have had the words come out of my mouth in the past of, I will never homeschool my children. But here we are, and I want to share this with you because maybe you're wondering, should I homeschool? Should I not? This is a conversation that is happening in a lot of families right now. I have so many friends that I just find out, they're having this conversation around the dinner table, so we thought we would have it here.
And it's an interesting one because right now, back when I first started reporting on homeschooling in our home state, it was very controversial. There was a bad case of homeschooling where there'd been a lot of child neglect, and that had just painted a terrible picture of what homeschooling was, or probably wasn't, but that's what people thought. And so I started digging into it as a reporter way back then, and you, hon, you were probably just an infant. You were little, so that was quite a few.
I don't remember.
Quite a few years ago. And so that was, it was fringe back then. And as a matter of fact, the Washington Post just wrote an article, big article, after they did extreme research on this. And the headline was something like, from fringe to mainstream, homeschooling is now the fastest growing form of education in our nation.
Really?
Isn't that something?
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is shocking.
It is, and it kind of grows out of the epidemic. With COVID, so many families were forced into homeschooling, sort of, and then that didn't go so well for a lot of people. But yet they really got the idea that maybe they could do this. So, what about you? How did you finally come to that conclusion, and what started to spur it on?
Well, I know there's many reasons people homeschool, and I think ours is kind of unique. And again, that's why we love here on A Home That Heals to remind you that you were made for this. You know your family, you know your child. So I don't think there's just this blanket reason of why people homeschool. I know that a lot of people do it because they are concerned about what is being taught in the schools, or their child is really struggling with being bullied. We thankfully didn't have that concern. We loved the school that my kids were a part of. In fact, we're still involved in that school. I still support them, and I love their education model, and our kids weren't bullied. It was such a safe environment for them to be at, and they were doing well. However, there were struggles that they were facing, and I just knew as we began praying about it, both my husband really knew that a big part of their struggle was time as a family, and especially time with my husband. He has a unique schedule that made it to where he didn't see them many days out of the week because of the school day, because of the school hours. And the struggles that my kiddos were facing, especially, I have 3 boys. They needed their dad. They needed this strong man to be able to come alongside them and really guide them and help them to heal. And they just weren't given that time. And so that was the main reason why we chose to homeschool. However, I had no idea all of the benefits that we would get from homeschooling our kids. And so now that I'm a part of this homeschool community that is just filled with awesome people, normal people, I will tell you. Because isn't that how it is?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, there's always that one story that all of a sudden coins everybody as crazy or weird or, fringe. And it's like that in any walk of life, correct? And so with homeschooling, it's been so fun to get to know people. And really, there's a myriad of reasons why people homeschool. And so I know this is something that a lot of people are considering and wondering, can I do this? I don't know.
Well, haven't you had friends say, I could? I think you said that earlier. I could never do that.
Oh, well, yeah, I said that. I said there's no way I would ever homeschool my kids. I really, truly believed that I couldn't. I wasn't equipped for that. There's no way that I could do that. And that is probably the biggest thing in the last year and a half that we've been homeschooling. The most widely used phrase that people have said to me is, oh, there's no way I could homeschool my kids.
And you know what? It's understandable. I mean, when you have children, your oldest 12, 11, then 8, then 6, that's a widespread. And that's a lot of different levels of learning, different styles of learning. I think that's one of the things that with your kids, my grandkids, that I think is interesting in watching you do it is, can I imitate one of my grandchildren?
Yes.
One of my grandchildren.
I would love to see this.
This is how he learns. And it took a little getting used to, because I help a little bit, not as much as I'd like to, but anyway, let's picture any little thing he could have in his hand, maybe a little dinosaur, maybe a little something. And he'll be walking around while you're teaching. Now, that wouldn't fly in a school setting, no. But you have told me, and I have witnessed how he needs to move, and that works for him. And he's retaining like you can't, I can't believe, and I'm sure you're blown away seeing it day in and day out.
I'm absolutely blown away. He is such a kinesthetic learner that he has to touch, he has to move. And at first when we would do this and I'd be teaching a lesson and he's sitting here moving and thinking and touching things, I thought, he's playing. He is not even kind of paying attention. And so I would make them narrate, afterwards, what did we just read about? What did we just learn about? I tell you what, that kiddo could narrate everything Amazing. That I had talked to him about. He had thoughts about it. He had ideas about it. He had questions about it. And I just realized, wow, everything I thought I knew about how kids should learn, that they should be sitting there quiet and attentive, which they need to learn how to do. And there are times I make him do that. He has to learn that. Those are skills.
Sure.
We need to build up their skills. However, I realized just because he's not doing that doesn't mean he's not learning. And it's fun. It is fun to watch him just in this world that now I've learned he's taking the story, he's taking in whatever I'm teaching him, and he's creating it in his mind. He sees it, he's envisioning it, and it's just so fun. I'm learning a lot alongside my kids.
Well, you mentioned now that you're the teacher, and I remember you telling me before you made this decision, one thing that was a struggle was homework, trying to help them with their homework. And I still remember you saying, if I hear one more time, that's not the way the teacher does it, you are going to scream.
Yeah.
And that is a big piece of this. How do you make that transition from being just mom that doesn't know how to do the math problem the way my teacher does it, to mom who really is the teacher?
Yeah. Okay. All my 90s mamas out here, right? You're sitting down to do math with your kids, and the way that you did math, the way you learned to do math, that you perfectly were capable of doing and has served you very well in your lifetime. Now, all of a sudden, you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know how to do math.
It's a wonder you can get through the day.
It is a miracle that you have survived. And I just, especially, do you have that child that you are so much alike that you just butt heads all the time? I do. I have God has blessed me with him so much that I get to see what I was like as a child, and he is amazing. But we butt heads because we are so similar. And he is the one that I was most concerned about. I thought, there is no way, Lord, we are going to ruin our relationship. There's no way that this is going to work, but I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you. And I tell you what, now that I am his primary educator, his primary teacher, now that we are exploring together and we're having fun together learning, and I'm learning alongside him, he has not questioned me once.
Really?
He has not had that, well, that's not how I learned how to do it, and that's not right. And it's been beautiful. We have such a fun, wonderful relationship. We still butt heads. We still have our moments. However, it's not the same struggle. Like, I'm against, his teacher, and I'm trying to teach him something completely different than, the real way.
Right. One of the things I often hear about homeschooling, and I should, full disclosure here, I actually homeschooled this fine young lady here for, about 2 years, I think. And I did it because of that story that I did all those years ago. And I saw how much you could pack into a shorter amount of time, and it gave us more time together to go and do fun things, frankly. Fun learning things, but fun things. And so now, but that was just one-on-one. I just had one, and you were pretty little. And so I'm curious, how did you figure out how to structure your day and stuff? And what are some of those big benefits about, you mentioned time with your husband, but what other kind of time has that given you with the kids?
Well, I've realized that, again, we have in our mindset, that school has to be from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., whatever it is, in our mind's eye. And we don't realize how much of that day is filled with extra things, or just things that aren't really necessary, aren't really needed, or can be done in a creative, different way. And I've been amazed at how condensed our actual school time is, and how much we are able to learn about the things that the kids are interested in, that I'm interested in doing with them, new skills and such. And so we've really been able to condense our school day. We do a lot of school all together, and I love watching the older kids teach the younger kids and work with them, because I do believe, I'm seeing this in my own life too, when we have to teach something to someone else, we learn it all over again. We learn it better. It sinks in to our minds, and because we have to critically think about how to help somebody through those steps. So that's been really fun to see. But also, we do school at different times. Again, we tailored around my husband's schedule because that was really important. We have more family time together. And so sometimes school is in the evenings. Sometimes school is in the afternoons. Sometimes school is on Saturday. And that is a beautiful thing. School we can learn whenever. My greatest hope for my kids is that I teach them a love of learning. Because if they love to learn, then, oh my goodness, the whole world is open to them.
True.
They will want to learn about new and different things. As they get older and they're looking for a career, they'll want to dive in and really understand and learn more about it because they have a love of learning. And so that's my greatest desire for them.
Well, I see it. I really see it unfolding. You've been telling us the reasons you decided to homeschool. And of course, people have all kinds of reasons. And in that article that I mentioned, wow, you get some real insight. So when we come back, I'll be sharing that.
Hi, I'm Brad, president of Northwest Christian Credit Union, and we're proud to be sponsoring this episode of A Home That Heals. At Northwest Christian Credit Union, your financial well-being is our priority. Your Christian values are welcomed, and your faith is encouraged. From everyday personal banking to multi-million-dollar church loans to biblically sound investing, Northwest Christian Credit Union is your stewardship partner. We're here to serve with personalized banking in person or online. Northwest Christian Credit Union has been serving the Christian community since 1954, investing back into our local Christian community is a part of our DNA, and believe that healthy homes foster a stronger community. So we are proud to sponsor A Home That Heals. Visit mynccu.org to explore how membership can benefit you.
Welcome back to A Home That Heals, and now to that article that goes into depth about why people are choosing to homeschool. And they interviewed over 100 families, but they did a questionnaire with many more to find out why is homeschooling by such a wide margin becoming the fastest growing form of education in the U.S. And so they asked parents this question: thinking about some specific reasons, did your family choose to homeschool this child because, number one, concern about school environment? That was their number one reason, the people they interviewed. Now, you already said that really wasn't your big concern. The second one was to provide moral instruction. We might say religious instruction. How big a role did that play in all of this for you?
That played a pretty big role. I loved that I got to instruct them, more throughout the day and utilize God's word in our instruction. We utilize his word a lot for our vocabulary words, for spelling, those kinds of things, because as I've shared in the podcast in the past, that was a big detriment to me really wanting to read the Bible. I didn't understand it. There were things that I didn't understand. And so I love being able to teach them the context in which it was written, and they're getting history from that, and they're gleaning so much information about a different way of life, as well as again, getting their vocabulary words that they need to know for everyday life too, but also that helps them really understand what that verse or what that chapter is, what God is saying through it.
So worldview kind of comes into it then too. And that was one thing, a lot of the people said that they were concerned about the influence that the school was having. And again, we really didn't have that worry, but boy, you all you have to do is watch the news to see that a lot of families now are showing up at school board meetings because they don't want their child taught certain things at school that they think that they should teach at home. Another thing was the child has special needs that the school can't or won't meet. And as a matter of fact, it was so interesting to me that in that survey, about 1 in 3 homeschool parents said this concern prompted them to homeschool. And nearly 3 in 10 homeschool parents say that their child has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, which we've heard and we've talked about. It is so prevalent now. And so that, as a teacher, I teach. I can see how difficult it is for schools to be all things to all children. Yeah. I know schools try really hard to do that, but it is very difficult. And I can see why parents that have children with special needs would take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can too. That's something I've loved being able to do as a homeschool mom, is to tailor the education to them. There were a lot of gaps that I saw my children having, whether they really understood how to do it on paper, they knew how to pass that test, but they didn't actually know how to apply it to life. And so now we've been able to take that and apply it to their life to help them so that they do know how to use those skills that they are going to need, for sure in their future. So I really enjoy that. As I mentioned before with my one kiddo, that, he would be considered ADHD, but I haven't had any issues with that at home because he's able to get the input and get all of that he needs. And so I'm very thankful that we aren't having to have those conversations about medication and all of that, because we've been able to find ways to help him explore and move and do as he learns. So
what do you, everything you've said here has been wonderful. It sounds like it's just, doesn't it? It just sounds wonderful. Are there some downsides?
Oh, there are. Yeah. There's downsides in everything. Everything's hard. I love that phrase, everything's hard. And usually they'll list out things, doing homework with your kids after school is hard. Getting up early in the morning and making lunches and getting them off on the school bus is hard. Homeschooling is hard. Choose your hard. And I think that is very true in our case. Is there are difficult things. We're together a lot. And so we do have to find times to explore separately and have alone time and get involved in different activities. However, for us, the benefits have far outweighed the downsides. I will say, that phrase, man, I could never homeschool my kid. That, when I really was grappling with God about, you want me to what? I'm very confused because we had a clear understanding that I would never homeschool my child. What I really began to see in Scripture is how we are called as parents to be the primary educators in our child's life. We have been given that duty. It's not the teachers. It's not the pastor. It is no one else's job, role, responsibility, requirement besides us. Now, sometimes we hand our kids over to others to, educate them. And I think we need to do that very wisely, and we need to use discernment, and we really need to pray through that and take it seriously, because ultimately it's our role. And it hit me that, you know what? Everyone has to homeschool. Everyone. It doesn't mean that your child isn't in a traditional school, but you have to educate your child. You have to be the first and primary educator of your child. And finding ways to do that, whether your kids are in a traditional school during the day or whether you choose to homeschool them and take on that role too, I think is really important. And then you will see the fruits of that labor just in the most beautiful, glorious way ever. I know there are people that homeschooling is not an option. Taking your child out of a traditional school is just not an option, whether it's for financial reasons, your job. There's so many reasons why that just can't happen for a lot of families, or that you just don't feel called to that. However, it doesn't negate the reality that you are called to be the first and foremost educator in your child's life. I have found that there are so many ways to do that, and we're really excited. Our next podcast, we're going to cover some of those tips and some of those strategies of taking back that role, realizing, you know what? Yeah, that is correct. We have amazing pastors in our life, and we have amazing teachers in our life that can instill and bolster what we're teaching at home. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's me. It's me and my husband that are called to train up our children in the ways that they should go and teach them and give them a worldview and give them new skills and grow closer in relationship to them. There is nothing like learning alongside someone.
Oh, that's true. I can hardly wait for you to share those ideas. And so I see that podcast brewing, and that will be what we cover next time, because we know that you have questions, excuse me, you have ideas too. And so if you have some questions that you'd like us to talk about, we would love to answer those on our next podcast. You can find us at homethatheals.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And so plug in and ask your questions or share your ideas. Boy, we treasure those ideas.
We sure do. Until next time, we are praying for you that your home will become all that God designed it to be, that you will be equipped through His Word and through His power. And we look forward to seeing you next time on A Home That Heals.
A Home That Heals is produced in partnership with 89.5 KTSY. To find out more about them, go to ktsy.org.